So there's a very general question in the chat. Taryn McCanna says, we have a consortium that uses a single shared catalog, Evergreen, but different regional systems have access to different third-party databases. Can VuFind show different resources to different patrons depending on which system they are in? And there are a variety of ways you could approach this. VuFind is designed in such a way that you can install a single instance of VuFind, but create multiple front ends to it. So one approach that you could take would be to configure a different VuFind front end for each regional system, and perhaps have some sort of custom mechanism added to your theme to switch between them if you want users to be able to make that choice. And then you'd have some decisions to make about which things are shared between all the instances and which things are configured differently. But certainly there's potential there to address that. It's, as I say, really a question of how integrated and how separated you want it to be. You might have to make different implementation choices depending on your needs. And some approaches are likely to be more or less labor intensive to maintain, depending on that degree of separation. But I think it's feasible. Where it might get tricky is if you wanted to have a single login that everybody uses that then directs them to the right place based on their patron account membership. But I think even that would be possible. It just might require more custom work. And I thank you for the volunteer to show GeoName Authority live. If your connection is working and you'd like to, please feel free. And then after that, if there are no more questions, I will dive into Koha.
Yeah, are you getting my voice?
Yes, coming through clearly.
Okay, so let me try. I'm trying to share my screen.
I can see it.
Can you see now?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, fine. So what I actually tried to show you that each of these individual data element we have collected from different geospatial sources. Here you can see this is basically the tag 034 data. Lot many columns are there and slightly haphazard. When a project goes on, what else? So this is basically data coming from GeoName Authority, geonames.org, and this is the data, and some data is coming from Nominative. So you can see it here. So let me increase the size slightly. So here bounding box is coming. 754 district file it is showing now. Now what happens after this data we are getting, we then directly converted into different mark tag we required. Say for example, it is starting from here 151, then 034, the bounding box data. Every data element includes the mark tag, then different kind of separator. Now separator what we need, I will try to show you in live mode. Then 034, 451 and so on. So after all this individual data element we have collected, then we packed this one in a single record. So this is for one particular district name. That is, next one is for another one and so on. All together 45 district here. So after that we can export this particular column. There is an option called export, custom tabulator export, and there we can deselect everything and select only this particular this markauth file. You can see here this particular column markauth, we can select it here. Then it will be converted into TSV file with only this particular column, and after that happen, we can open up another project in another, open define instance with only this particular column. Now this particular column, we need this particular data set, we need to convert into a 4-column architecture so that it becomes compatible with this mark edit software, because there we need to auto generate some mark tags including leader. So you can see here, it can be automated. The entire JSON history, if I copy from here, you see what magic it will do. The moment I, go for this one particular column based data structure, then I can use this JSON structure and perform the operation. You see, it will be converted into a 4-column architecture. You can see here. So this particular district at leader, record number, leader, indicator position, and content. So when this is been done, I can again export this particular file as a tab separated file, and then I can come to my this mark editor. I can open the mark editor. Then we can, here you can see this import from OpenDefine is there, but subject to the condition data is available into that 4-column architecture. And that's why we have used different separator to convert the entire data structure into this record number, tag, indicator, and content. Now, if we export this one again in TSP format and come to mark edit, then I can select it from import from OpenDefine. Then I can, go for, say for example, I have already stored it to save time. Although I never knew I'll get this additional time slot. It is 2021. Then VuFind Summit. Data. So this one is the TSP file. Now the moment I open, it will now make everything mark compatible, where I can generate, this leader is a placeholder. I can generate leader for every record. I can add different other tags like 001 and so on. And finally, I can save it as a mark record and can import in my Koha. And there, the moment I call it, it will automatically fetch data and can implement inside my VuFind. So suppose this is one. Now suppose I am searching from iron. So it will now search, and here you see without place name I can restrict that in which of the documents with the term iron actually included many different other places. And again, it's a possible now we can write I am interested into this particular part, so it will now create that how many records are there in this particular part. So that's all, Damien.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that. It's very interesting. So I guess at this point, I will go ahead and talk a little bit about Koha and multiple instances. And, as I say, I didn't prepare anything for this, but I know of some useful resources and also some important things to be aware of that I think will be helpful to anyone who's looking to get a VuFind and Koha instance together. And I think some of these concerns overlap with what we heard discussed about Evergreen. So first of all, we've had quite a bit of conversation today about ILS drivers, but in case anyone is not already familiar, I can take a step back and just say ILS drivers are sort of the glue code that connects VuFind, which has its own index of records, with your integrated library system, which has additional information that VuFind doesn't store itself, things like shelf status of items, patron information, and so forth. So whenever you are working with Koha, you need to configure an ILS driver so that VuFind can interact with Koha. If you want to learn more about ILS drivers, just sort of as a basic introduction, uh, I would encourage you to look at some of the video recordings we've made during our tutorial sessions on past community calls. You can find those if you go to vufind.org, click into the documentation section, and then click onto the videos page under manuals. And you'll see that some of our most recent videos, numbers 19 and 20, cover ILS drivers. So video 19 here is an introduction to sort of the basic principles of ILS drivers. It talks about some special ones. It talks about how to troubleshoot them. So whatever system you're working with, if you're getting started with VuFind and you want to connect to your integrated library system data, I would encourage you to watch this video. Now, the original topic of the talk in this slot was about multiple Koha integration. And that is because one of VuFind's capabilities, as we again talked about a little bit earlier, is that you can potentially connect it to multiple integrated library systems, which is really useful in, say, a consortial environment. And by indexing your records with prefixes on their IDs so that VuFind can identify which system owns which records, you can use this special driver called multi-ILS to route requests to the right place and connect users to real-time data and patron information from multiple systems. And that is what video 20 here is all about, introduction to the multi-backend driver. This tells you how to set up multi-backend and connect it to multiple systems. It includes a demo. So, I would recommend, if you're getting started, connect to one Koha first so that you are familiar with the process. But once you're able to do it once, you can then do a little bit more work with multi-backend to extrapolate that and connect to all the Kohas that you want. So now I think it's worth mentioning a few specific details about Koha, things that often catch people up when they are working with it for the first time. First of all, if you search our wiki for Koha, you will find that there is a wiki page about how to index Koha. Unfortunately, I think some of the information here may not be completely up to date. So I encourage Koha experts to look this over and update it if I'm correct and anything is outdated. But I do think, even if it's not 100% perfect, there is a significant amount of useful information here. One of the first things of note in integrating Koha and VuFind is that VuFind needs to index your records, so you need to get them out of Koha. And there are two possible approaches. One is to use the OAI PMH protocol, which is a well-established way of getting records in an incremental way as they change and evolve. And I would recommend using OAI PMH. I think that's probably the most straightforward approach. On that tutorial video page, there is also a whole video talking about how to use OAI PMH in VuFind. So that's another resource you could consider looking at. Though you also need to configure OAI PMH on the Koha side so that Koha serves up the records that VuFind needs to consume. But if you don't want to use OAI PMH, there are also command line tools for exporting records from Koha, and those are discussed in this wiki page, along with some details about how to index them. And that is one of the other important catches about VuFind Koha integration, the fact that by default, VuFind assumes that your MARC records have a unique identifier in the 001 field. And unique identifiers are very important for VuFind. It's how every record is distinguished from every other record. Every record has to have an identifier that identifies it. So if you export records from Koha and just import them into VuFind with the default configuration, things aren't going to work right because the records won't seem to have IDs, and they either will get rejected entirely, or they'll all end up overwriting each other, and you'll just have one record in your index and you'll be confused. But the solution is simple. You just need to tell the indexer where to find the IDs. And I believe in at least some cases, Koha is putting those in the 999C field. And so this page talks about how to configure that. Again, there's also a whole video about indexing MARC records that goes into depth about how the import tool works and how to configure it. So if you need more background, that is available to you. So that's really all you need in order to get your records into VuFind's index, which is the critical first step to begin working with these two systems. But you also need to be able to connect your ILS driver to get real-time information and enable patron functionality. And that is where another possible point of confusion can arise, because there are 3 different Koha ILS drivers to choose from. And the one that's right for you may depend on what version of Koha you're using. As we saw in Galen's talk about Evergreen, there are sort of different ways that you can connect between VuFind and an ILS, and some of them have advantages and disadvantages. And in the case of Koha, just as with Evergreen, the earliest Koha integrations were doing direct database connection to just pull information out of Koha's underlying database. And that approach has the advantage of working with just about any version of Koha as long as the database schema is stable. But it has a lot of disadvantages. It's difficult to set up from a security perspective. It doesn't allow you to write things. It only allows you to read things. It's kind of old-fashioned. So the basic Koha ILS driver is just the old school direct database connection approach, which might be a good choice for you if you have a very, very old version of Koha and you don't need a lot of functionality. But I would not recommend using that in the majority of cases. I think most people are going to want to use one of the other 2 drivers, which are Koha ILS DI, which makes use of the ILS DI APIs in Koha, which have been around for quite a long time. So if you don't want to just do the simple direct database connection, but you don't have a cutting edge version of Koha, this might be a good choice for you. But the one that most people should be using at this point that I strongly recommend is Koha REST, which takes advantage of a RESTful API plugin for Koha that offers a really full-featured API that VuFind can leverage to do all of its advanced functionality, all of the user features, and so forth. The only disadvantage of this is that your Koha needs to be new enough to support the REST API plugin, and also you need to be able to do the work of installing and configuring the plugin. But all of this is documented for you in the Koha rest.ini configuration file, which provides some initial steps you'll need to take, and on the GitHub page for the RESTful API plugin itself. And so with 10 minutes to go, that's just sort of my top of the head thoughts on how to get the background to set up Koha and multi-backend using a lot of existing resources, some of the things that I found to be tricky for others that you should be aware of. So we now have 10 minutes if people have questions or if anyone wants to add anything else. And also thank you, Galen, for confirming that 999C is the canonical bib ID field in Koha, so I haven't been lying to everyone.
Hello, I'm Eremaila, and I have been working with VuFind and Koha quite a lot, so I could maybe say a few words while people are thinking about questions. So the Koha REST driver, as Steven mentioned, is the one that I would also recommend to anyone starting work with VuFind and Koha. It will work from Koha versions 2005 onwards. and it should be supported for all of the versions from that point on. The older drivers, including the ILS DI driver, needing the database access, are probably going to break if they haven't already. I think because there have been some significant database changes in the Koha database structure, and I think we should also take a look at those and verify, check that if they still work and if there is anything that should be done. There is a fair likelihood that there is something that should be changed. I'd like to mention about the Koha integration that we try to use the sort of official REST APIs as much as possible. Koha has a sort of developing set of REST APIs already, but there have been some things that we want to have for features that have not been implemented yet in the official REST APIs, and also some that we need for performance issues reasons, because in certain cases all the information is available, but it's not easy to fetch quickly enough. But Koha has been developing in that regard as well, so I believe that in the future we can make the role of the REST plugin smaller. Not sure how long it will take until we can eliminate it at all. I hope that point comes somewhere in the future. But the nice thing is that with Koha, the plugin infrastructure is official, and so you don't have to do any sort of patching of Koha code or stuff like that to make things work. So it's not so difficult to do. There are some things that you need to follow, and if you're going with this route, I think it's worth checking out the comments in the koharest.ini file and follow those to the T, so you can get things up and running smoothly. Also, I've tried to make sure that the wiki page that Damian showed would be up to date, at least with regards to indexing the data. However, I haven't actually tried the Koha driver since I've been only working with the Koha REST one.
It sounds to me like we may need to seriously consider deprecating the original Koha driver, given that its end of life seems imminent if it's not already upon us. And if we do that, then we would want to revise the driver section of the wiki page to better explain the remaining options.
I think it would probably make sense to at least say that this is not supported for recent Koha versions or something like that. And
Yeah.
my aim has for the whole time been to make the Koha REST driver the best one ever. So it will support all the functionality, and there is still some to come, so that we can get as far as possible at par with the functionality that the Koha OPAC itself provides for the users.
All right, with about 5 minutes to go, we still have a little bit of time for questions, but I will also stop and say thank you, everyone, for presenting either in planned or impromptu ways, and for everyone who's helped with the organization of this event so far. I've really enjoyed this first day, and we have 2 more days ahead of us, same time, and you should all be getting reminder links for tomorrow's session very soon if you have not already. So again, here we go. Question. How will the REST driver keep pace with the Koha REST endpoints?
Well, the idea with the REST APIs is that they are versioned. So you should be able to trust that if you access a V1, for version 1 of an API, it doesn't change between the Koha versions. So far, that has been true, and I hope that continues to be true. If I recall, there was some minor mishap in the very beginning of the age of the REST APIs. So sometimes there are gaffes that prove problematic, but anyway, the idea is that if you create a new API version or a new change a call significantly so that it's not back compatible, you should create a new version of the API. So there should be like version 2 of the Koha APIs that would provide the different functionality. In real life, that's of course complicated, and it's easier to try to do changes so that you keep back compatibility by adding features and adding parameters or different ways of including more information in the responses or in the request, but not breaking the existing functionality. I think the harder part is to keep the REST plugin up to date with regards to changes in Koha. We are updating our Koha installations quite regularly, so that helps us to catch any emerging issues with the driver, and we try to keep the plugin, and we try to keep the plugin up to date with all the changes happening in Koha. But since there is no sort of easy way to find out all the different changes and how they affect the existing code, which lives outside of the main repository, that's an ongoing process, and sometimes we need to rely on bug reports and things like that to sort of sort things out afterwards, after the fact. But we try to avoid that as much as possible. But there was a recent example of a problem was that a preference name in Koha was changed, and when we read the preference from the database, we used the old name, and well, it just changed the functionality, disabled holds for all users. So it happens, but it's the best we can do, and it makes all these things possible. There is another question about using the REST endpoint to create a dashboard kind of thing in VuFind. Now, I think I would like to have some more clarification of what the dashboard would include. So what kind of functionality or what kind of displays or widget or meters would you expect to see on a dashboard? So I can't really answer straight off. All right, so like statistics and things like that. To be frank, I'm not sure. I haven't really familiarized myself with all the aspects of the REST APIs. So, of course, if there is something that's missing, you would be free to create a plugin to fill the gap. I'm not sure if the official APIs include any of these statistics yet, at least, but that's easy to check, of course. The REST plugin concentrates on the patron functionality, so it doesn't provide anything like that. That's more of an administrative side or statistics. So that would be sort of different. And Galen is right that the reporting system could be used for that, but you would still have to create a dashboard to handle those the JSON data. But that's a nice idea though. So you don't necessarily have to use the REST API for that. There are other ways to get access to the information as well.
And with that, we seem to have reached our end time. So thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate all the interaction and interesting content. And I will see you again tomorrow at the same time as today. Enjoy the rest of your day, or have a good night, depending on where in the world you are. And I'll talk to you again soon.